A few weeks ago I made a video where we restored this epic ABIT BP6 board. With dual Celeron Mendocinos and its overclocking capabilities, this board is an absolute legend among vintage boards. While ordering parts for this project, I wasn't able to find some of the caps with the correct value, small enough to fit the board, and the two golden orbs we're going to install. So we hacked some modern SMD caps and installed them as regular through-hole caps around the two sockets. I'll put a link to the recap video at the end of this video if you want to watch it too. In this video we are going to try out a few sets of CPUs and do some overclocking. We're also going to restore and respray a period correct case and finish this 1999 Dream Machine. This Chieftec Dragon is in a better condition than the green case that we resprayed in the VP6 video, but it does have some scratches, so I don't feel too bad respraying it in some crazy color. The case badge is missing, but there is some old glue here that we need to clean up later. Okay, so this case is missing 3 of the large bay covers and 1 of the 3.5 inch covers. So we need to install something in at least 4 of the bays. A few more scratches here. They're pretty small, so you may not be able to see them. Now let's have a look inside. Okay, we've got the original power supply. That is excellent. And we have some loose drive rails inside here. Unfortunately, only 2 of them. That kind of sucks. That means I need to source at least 2 more pairs. These drive bays are removable. Ew, this case is really smelly. That is pretty disgusting, actually. And we've got a couple of very period correct fans in here. One in the hard drive bay. And another one at the back here. I'm not sure if we should keep them. They are period correct for sure, but probably also quite noisy. Well, perhaps if we slow them down. Well, this is a bit unusual. So they are powered through a regular Molex, but the fan speed is controlled by a separate wire. Never seen this before. I'm sure it works, but it is going to be a challenge for the cable management later. Let's go for a complete disassembly. And remove these fan holders too. The power supply at the back here has a golden grill. Looks very fancy. That is a first for me. But as you will see, this might fit this theme quite well. The power supply is dated 2003. There is something loose inside. Sounds like it could be a screw. We better check right away. The usual disclaimer, please don't mess around inside power supplies. The caps inside may be charged with mains voltage. This power supply also has this bracket. So if you're buying a used case, make sure this bracket is included. Now let's check what's rattling around inside. Okay, with those 4 screws removed, let's see if we can get inside. Oh, definitely needs some cleaning in here. One of the transformers is installed in the lid. Oh, come on! Wow, that is the can of one of the caps in the power supply. That cap must have exploded. Well, I've seen a lot of bad caps, but this is a first. Let's pull that PCB out. Well, we're not going to use this power supply today, but I'm pretty sure I have a spare. I'm not sure this power supply is worth repairing, honestly. I guess it depends on how expensive those caps are. In some power supplies, these 2 large caps here cost a lot more than a used power supply. But then again, if I buy a used power supply, it may blow up too. Wow, check this out. This stuff here is what's left of one of the caps. Holy cow. Never seen a cap go quite this bad. And I have seen a lot of bad caps. And that's not the only bad cap. This guy here has spilled its guts too. Well, actually I'm not sure if this is cap juice. I mean, this white stuff here is definitely glue. But this could be cap juice, I'm not sure. The only expensive caps are these large cans here. All the remaining caps are cheap and well worth replacing. And these guys are Genpo CEWB, 680 microfarad, 200 volts. If you know anything about this brand, let me know in the comments. The power supply too has an unusual fan. It's powered with 2 wires on the PCB, but then it's controlled with this external cable, presumably to be connected to the motherboard. Well, that means these chassis fans are probably original to the case too. Let's pull that door off next. I just realized we're only using 2 sets of rails in the green case. So we can snatch 2 sets from the other case. That way we'll have 3 sets for this machine. Problem solved. The front panel is held on with tabs on the inside. I'm gonna guess there are 3 more tabs on this side too. So let's remove this panel next. Yeah, for sure, we've got 3 more tabs here, but only one of them is accessible from this side. The other 2 tabs are accessed on the inside here. The only remaining screws are on the flip-out feet now. The date inside the case is from 2003, so a few years newer than the motherboard. However, these cases were available when this motherboard was new, so this is still period correct. Instead of masking the case off, it's actually much quicker to drill out all the rivets. And when the case is done, we'll replace all those rivets. Aside from the rivets on the front and at the back, there are also some rivets underneath the case. With the 2 panels off, we don't need to mask anything off. We'll just go ahead and respray. I almost forgot, we need to remove the 2 locks. One on the side panel and one on the front panel. Since we're going to respray the case, we also need to remove these see-through windows here for the LEDs on the front panel. In the 3.5-inch drive bay, we're going to go with a regular diskette drive. In one of the large drive bays, we're going to go with a CD-ROM drive. And one of these hard drive bays. In the last bay, I'm going to install one of these cheap hard drive bays. I'll test these drives off camera and make sure they work. And then I'll respray everything in the matching color. Okay, while the paint is drying, let's try out some Celerons. So I've got everything hooked up here. We've got power graphics card, display hard drive, diskette drive and a CD-ROM drive. I'm gonna go as period correct as possible with this build. I don't know what month this board came out, so I'm gonna go with the early version of the GeForce 256 with SD RAM. I've also installed 512K of RAM and dual Celeron 300As. Let's start with a quick test. I'm actually going to run Windows NT on this machine, but unfortunately I don't own a copy, so while I do some shopping on eBay, we're gonna go with Windows 2000. And back in 1999, we were all playing Unreal, of course, so that's what we'll use for this test. I'm just gonna use the demo to see if the system runs smoothly. Okay, so with dual 300As, the intro runs really smoothly. It's not lagging at all actually. So already at 300 MHz, this game runs smooth. Okay, let's jump into BIOS and change from 66 MHz to 75. Exit and save. We are now running at 338 MHz instead of 300. Okay, system posts and it boots. Okay, so far so good. Let's try Unreal Tournament. And yeah, no problems whatsoever. The intro runs just fine. I have never used Unreal to benchmark, so I don't know how to get an actual score. The FPS here just keeps looping. Well, that's a pretty good start. Now let's jump into BIOS again and change to 83 MHz. Let's exit and save. And we are now running at 374 MHz. While it completes posts and it boots. and seems to be working just fine. Let's see if it's stable. The intro demo runs nice and smooth. No issues whatsoever. So easy to overclock these boards compared to older boards. Well, in that case, let's go for 100. Exit and save. We are now running at 450. That is quite a bloody overclock. Okay, it completes posts and it boots Windows. Seriously, that is quite impressive. And Windows still runs just fine. Now let's see how stable it is. Pretty smooth so far. Wow, I'm impressed. Holy cow, I think this is working. That is seriously impressive. That is 150 MHz overclock. Yeah, it totally ran through the entire demo without any hiccups. This totally works. Well, I'm impressed. But let's go silly and try 124 MHz. Now we're running at 558 MHz. But unfortunately, CPU is unworkable or has been changed. So how about if we change CPU core voltage? Let's go with 2.2. And hopefully we won't fry those Celerons. Let's quit and save. The system hanged, unfortunately. But hey, that's not bad. 450 MHz with dual Celeron 300As. Well, in that case, let's try these 366 MHz Celerons and see if they will go faster. I'm using the stock coolers because they have pads. But I am of course going to upgrade these coolers. So these guys have a clock multiplier of 5.5. So let's start with 75 MHz. And now these 366s are running at 413 MHz. Oh no! CPU unworkable or has been changed. So these guys wouldn't even do 413. That kind of sucks. Well, the Celeron Mendocino has a locked clock multiplier, so we can't change it from 5.5. And the slowest I can go with this BIOS is 72 MHz. So I guess that's what we'll try. And we'll increase the CPU core voltage to 2.2. I don't know if we can go higher, but I don't want to fry these guys. No, for some bloody reason it jumps back to 366. We're getting an error. So these guys were a disappointment. Let me know if you have been able to go faster with 366s. Well, in that case, let's try these 466s. Okay, Windows boots. So these guys are okay too. Okay, so these guys are locked to the clock multiplier of 7. So let's try them out at 75 MHz. The system just hanged. And we hadn't even started overclocking. I'll do some troubleshooting. And unfortunately, this guy here is dead. So with the second CPU installed in the socket, the board just doesn't post. So that unfortunately was a fail. Well, I guess we could try to overclock the one that's working. And if this works, I guess I'll order another one. Luckily these Mendocino Celerons are really cheap. And we are now running at 500 MHz. But unfortunately we got an error. Let's try to bump that voltage up to 2.2. With a fixed multiplier we can't really go slower than 500 MHz. And unfortunately that didn't work, so it dropped down to 466 and gave me an error. So that CPU was a fail too. In that case, let's try these out. These guys are 533 MHz. Well, I don't have high hopes of overclocking these guys, because the clock multiplier is set to 8. So we're going to get some huge steps between the speeds. The default is of course 66 MHz. And the slowest I can go above 66 is 72. But hey, who knows? Maybe we're lucky. Let's give this a try. Fingers crossed. So these guys are running at 550. No, we got an error. Oh, that sucks. Well, let's try to increase the voltage to 2.3 volts. Now see if it helps. Fingers crossed. No, that didn't help, unfortunately. And apparently the paint has dried. I went with metallic brown. It looks pretty 1999 to me. So first I washed all the parts in warm soapy water, and then I applied 1 coat of brown primer. And finally I applied 2 coats of this metallic brown color. This is quite typical for 1999 and the early 2000s. When I chose this color, I took some inspiration from Alienware's lineup from around the year 2000. And actually it turned out quite similar to Alienware Martian Red. Now to my favorite part of any project, the reassembly. Let's start from the bottom. I'll install all the rivets first to make sure this piece is perfectly aligned. With rivets installed in all the holes, this piece should be perfectly aligned. We can start popping. I'll go ahead and install the flip out feet right away, so we don't scratch up that fresh paint underneath. Next up I'm going to install the cover on top. Okay, that was all the rivets. So now we can go ahead and install the side panel. That paint looks good. I hope it shows up on camera. This paint is very nice and sparkling, and I was lucky to get a good result. It's always a challenge with spray cans. Next we need to borrow some rails from the metallic green case. The board is still not installed in this machine because it still has a fault. I had to pause this project because I was missing an essential tool to fix that motherboard. But thanks to my patrons and my Ko-fi supporters, I now have that tool. So this project too is ready for the next installment. And thanks to these rail holders, all the rails are still in this case. So we can go ahead and borrow the unused rails for the other case. This machine only has 2 5¼ inch drives, so we're only using 2 sets of these rails. And I have of course resprayed the front panel for the diskette drive too, and I managed to remember to respray the eject button too, and I somehow managed to remember to remove the see-through window, so now we can glue it back on. I went ahead and reinstalled the door off camera because there is a tiny spring here that took some concentration to put back on. And here's the final result. Looks pretty neat. Nice and sparkling. The see-through window doesn't have to be glued in place because it's held down with 2 plastic pins. Looks pretty pro when you remember small details like this. Looks pretty neat. I didn't think to respray the volume knob here, but it actually doesn't look too bad. It kind of looks like it was meant to be white. Well, it was meant to be white. Next up we have the removable hard drive cradle. I had to disassemble it, not to make a bloody mess when respraying it. Not bad. That color kind of pops with the black. This cradle came with a key, so no one but me gets to play Unreal on this machine. The cradle required some special screws and rubber grommets, but luckily they were included. Sometimes eBay is a great place to shop. The hard drive is no exception. So this is a period correct Hitachi Disk Star, or Death Star if you will. Since we're missing one of the blanks, I'm just going to install an empty drive bay in that last bay. Next up we can reassemble the side panel. Unfortunately I didn't get the key for this lock with the machine. So let's hope no one snatches my BP6 board. The door assembly is easy. It's just this lock and the two see-through windows. The final part to reassemble is the front panel with the power switch, the reset switch, tiny little speaker and the two LEDs. I somehow managed to remember to respray that tiny reset switch and the power switch too. I love this part of a project, installing the last pieces and getting to see the final result. Not bad so far. Love that crazy vintage color. Let's get a door on next. Perfect. And of course I installed the lock in the locked position. Murphy's Law never fails. Before we can install the motherboard, we need to upgrade these noisy coolers. Back in the day, my favorite cooler was the Thermaltake Golden Orb. Well, they actually still are. I love these coolers. I think they look awesome. But unfortunately, they are pretty much impossible to find nowadays. And these are for the VP6 projects. So we can't use these coolers for this project. But as I was shopping on eBay a few weeks ago, I noticed these guys here. These are Majesty Titans. And I thought they looked very similar to the Golden Orb. So I did some reading. And apparently, for whatever reason, Thermaltake were selling Golden Orbs under this brand too. I have no idea why, and I couldn't find any information about why they were rebranding these coolers. But these guys are in fact real Thermaltake Golden Orbs, just with a different sticker. So if you're shopping for Golden Orbs, check out this brand here, Titan Majesty. And these are obviously new old stock. But these boxes, they smell like an old warehouse. So I'm gonna have to toss them. But I'm definitely keeping these guys. These guys have thermal pads, so no paste needed. This is quite a treat to install brand new Golden Orbs in 2024. And thanks to our hacked caps here, they fit perfectly and there's actually plenty of room left. Back in the day, people used to chop them off here to make room for the large caps that were sitting here originally. I had a BP6 back then, so on my board they fit perfectly. But on the BP6, not so much. These boards are a bit picky with RAM, so I'm gonna go with 512 megs for now. But with a third 256 meg stick, you can max this board out. We can finally install the motherboard. Damn, that looks good. I wish this case had a window. Okay, let's install some drives, so we finally get to see the result. But first the blank here. The diskette drive is installed in the removable drive bay and then installed into the case and locked. That looks nuts and pretty awesome. All the 5 1/4 inch drives in this case needs to have these rails. So that is something to watch out for if you're on the market for one of these cases. Okay, let's fill up these drive bays. I'll start with the original blank here. And then we have the empty drive cage from Amazon. And then we have the period correct drive cage. And finally, the last piece to go in is a Martian red CD-ROM drive. That looks pretty sweet and kind of nuts. Well, I don't think we can get much more 1999 than this. I think it looks awesome. A bit nuts, but definitely awesome. So what do you guys think of this project? I think it looks awesome. This is a keeper for sure. However, I'm not too happy with the overclocking part of this video. So I'll see if I can find some more Mendocinos and make an upgrade and overclocking video. When it's done, I'll put a link on the screen to that video shortly. If you're watching this fresh, hit the bell icon below and set it to all. Meanwhile, check out this video about the year 2000 Dream Machine. I will end by saying thank you to my patrons. I appreciate your support. If you want to support me too, consider becoming a patron. Patrons get ad-free early access. If you like this video, let me know with a thumbs up in the comments. If you're a regular viewer, consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next week.